everybody would be able to hear the tape record calls between him and I, that immediately then, they were recorded, and we just continued still talking.
So he's talking to you, his wife is missing, and even at some point you hear a woman's voice in the background saying, "Hey, Scott," or something like that. He says, "Oh, that's my mom."
Yeah, which I think, I mean, I think it was his mother. He had family around him, and, quite a bit of people, with this frantic search for Lacey, so.
And we're jumping around because I don't want to spend our whole interview on this. I'm interested in what Amber Fry is doing now and where your life has gone, because you have a very interesting story. But Scott's wife is missing. Oh, he told you he wasn't married. And at some point, you found out that he had been. Mm-hmm. And he quickly changed his story. He said, "Oh, yeah, I was married, but my wife died." Now, this was before the Christmas period.
It was, that it was very difficult. It was the first holidays without her, in that, that's how he had presented it. It would be the first holidays without her. Mm-hmm. So, and this was, yes, before she was missing.
Right.
So.
And so, at some point, that helped to add to your suspicion, because you found out he was telling some stories and not being totally forthright, because he told you originally absolutely not married,
yeah,
never been married.
Right, because I'd asked, married, any kids, and no, and okay, and so his story was, it was painful, and, it sounded recent, not exactly, and with something like that, I'm a sensitive person, or sensitive to people's emotions and how they're feeling, and that's not one of those things you really pry into, well, how, and maybe for some people, but not
right.
for me. It was like, okay, well, we'll talk more, this is probably very difficult for him, and I felt for him,
sure.
Wow, it would be a painful subject to talk about.
So back to where we were then, your friend from the police department told you, hey, something there, you better talk to the Modesto police. Mm-hmm. And you talked to them, and they confirmed, yes, in fact, he's married and his wife is missing. And then they asked you to help them by recording your phone calls. And you knew it was just a matter of time before you would talk. And so they, wired your phone or wired you? How did that work?
Well, it wasn't like a wire per se. It was a device that I hooked up the phone and pressed record. So it's funny, some of, listening to some of the conversations, they sound like Minnie Mouse, and I didn't know there was a speed on the recorder, so it got taped on a high speed, which I was like, okay, is there any way to change that? But apparently some of them not. But yeah, it was very nerve-wracking, especially the first few weeks of doing it.
So the police weren't there, especially when you were recording. They just said, when he calls, press this button.
Yes.
And you press a button and you talked, and at first did you not acknowledge that you knew anything, like he was married?
Not at all.
Yeah. And you just talked like, hey, how you been? Where have you been? How's your trip going? And is that the point he got into the whole Paris, at the Eiffel Tower?
Right.
But you knew at that point his wife was missing, and that he was in fact married.
He was at a light visual. And I think they have a picture of him on his phone during the light visual, and it was probably with me. Yeah.
So they're having a vigil because a woman was missing, a young lady, his wife was missing, and from the vigil he calls you and is faking that he's in Paris.
Right. Yeah, I think he was kind of fishing, because then he was saying there was some bomb that went off close by, and did you hear about it? And I was like, no, because he was
trying
fishing.
to see if you'd watch the news.
See if the news was on in which, it really wasn't on. Even to this day, I don't really get into the news a whole lot, and so it wasn't, but at least I caught on as far as what he was doing, fishing for. And then because another time he was saying, "Oh, did you see the monarch butterfly kind of thing?" And so I looked it up to see, and because it was like top stories, and along with his, so. I just kind of was like, no, tell me about it, kind of thing.
So he thought maybe he could get through this whole thing without you catching on.
Possibly.
Now, at some point, you told him that, hey, what happened?
I think, which was still odd, is when I first was, I guess you would say, discovered that I had went with the Modesto police and, did a, a announcement in a publication, or I don't know what the right words, a news conference, that he had called me on the way up, and then we had spoke. He was just saying, "You're so brave," and it was like he was supporting me almost, like cheering me on, like and so even after that, he still continued calling and talking as if nothing. And the main, like I said, a lot of those, are public records. So
we're talking with Amber Fry, and Amber Fry wrote a book. She's not pushing the book. I'm pushing the book because I read it, and I'm a reader, and I like to read, and it's really, really riveting and well written for such a young person to write it. It's a very well written book, and very honest and forthright, and a very brave book. We have to go to commercial. Sean's signaling us, go to commercial. He's doing this or something. We're going to talk more to Amber Fry. By the way, she's got a very exciting life and some exciting things coming up in her life, and we're going to talk about those before this show is over. So don't go anywhere.